This is a huge shock in Japan, where strict gun control laws mean shooting deaths are extremely rare.
Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're looking at 10 shocking assassinations of the 21st century.
The army there says President Idris Deby has died just one day after he was declared the winner of elections that secured him a 6th term in office.
For this list, we're looking at high-profile assassinations from the turn of the millennium onwards. Did we leave any out? Let us know in the comments. Number 10. King Birendra of Nepal. Although Nepal's Shah dynasty was abolished in 2008, its former king, Birendra of Nepal, did not live to see that dissolution. That's because this 10th Shah ruler was assassinated in 2001 by his own son Dipendra.
The Himalayan kingdom of Nepal has begun 13 days of mourning after 8 members of the royal family, including the king and queen, were killed in a palace massacre last night.
The incident was known as the Nepalese Royal Massacre, when Birendra, his queen Aishwarya, and 7 other members of the royal family were gunned down on June 1, 2001.
If Nepal's royal family is to be believed, 30-year-old Dipendra, then crown prince, had in one cruel stroke eliminated the king, the queen, his younger brother, and at least 7 other members of his own family.
There was plenty of confusion in the aftermath of the bloodshed, as Dipendra himself died shortly after the massacre. Questions continue to rise with regards to the conspirators involved, and even whether or not Dipendra's fatal wound was self-inflicted.
Within hours of taking over, the new king described the massacre as an accident, an explanation no one was willing to buy. To the people, the attempt later to swing the needle of suspicion on Prince Dipendra smelt inevitably of a cover-up.
Number 9. Rafic Hariri. This former prime minister of Lebanon didn't die while in office, but that doesn't mean his assassination wasn't shocking.
His assassination created carnage. "22 other people were killed and scores injured."
Rafic Hariri served 2 non-consecutive terms as prime minister between 1992 and 2004, during which he assisted in bringing to an end the country's brutal civil war. However, Hariri was assassinated just a few months after his resignation, the victim of a roadside bombing in Beirut. Members of the Shia Islamist militant group Hezbollah were tried for Rafiq's murder.
6 years after the assassination, finally, some arrest warrants. 2 of Hezbollah's most senior operatives, Mustafa Badruddin and Salim Jamil Ayash, have been indicted for the murder, along with 2 other members.
The tragedy triggered the Cedar Revolution, a series of protests and demonstrations against Hariri's assassination that ended in the withdrawal of Syrian troops from Lebanon on April 27, 2005.
In April 2005, the Syrian government relented to popular and international pressure and began pulling its troops out of Lebanon, ending nearly 30 years of military occupation.
Number 8. João Bernardo Vieira. Military coups are a risky proposition for many reasons, not the least of which is the possibility that the instigators of the coup might themselves become targets.
The military has long played a prominent role in Guinea-Bissau, with a series of coups and mutinies since independence from Portugal in 1974.
This was the case with João Bernardo Vieira, the former president of Guinea-Bissau. Vieira took the presidency without bloodshed in 1980. But the politician was not so lucky when it came to the end of his own term.
Vieira took power during a coup in 1980 and went on to rule for 23 of the past 30 years.
The president's dismissal of his military chief of staff was met with violent rebellion and civil war, while accusations of murder, conspiracy, and money laundering followed Vieira while he was in temporary exile. After multiple attempts on his life, João Bernardo Vieira was murdered by soldiers on March 2, 2009.
The president of Guinea-Bissau is dead, assassinated by his own soldiers, just hours after a bomb killed his rival, an armed forces general.
Number 7. Shukri Belaid. The looming threat of violence is unfortunately something that's always swirled around those in politics.
He was aware of the danger, and that's what underlies the power of courage, overpowering one's fears. I think that Chokri Belaid knew that he could lose his life, and so we learn a lesson.
This becomes doubly true when those politicians are serving intense and chaotic scenarios, with some paying the ultimate price. Tunisian lawyer and politician Shukri Belaid was fatally wounded by gunfire right outside of his home on February 6, 2013.
We don't know who carried out the assassination, but certainly suspicions are high that the Salafis were involved. So it's really unfortunate.
He had been working as Secretary General within a secular Tunisian communist group, the Democratic Patriots Unified Party, and was the victim of an assassination by radical Islamists. Protests would follow in the wake of Belaid's death, with violence between police and protesters even erupting at the man's funeral 2 days later.
And the goal of these protest actions was actually the dissolution of the government. They believe that not only the Interior Minister Ali Dadaev needs to resign, but that the government needs to step down as a whole and needs to be replaced by a government of national unity.
Number 6. Idriss Déby Itno. Déby is another president who took power in a coup, this one in 1990. An authoritarian ruler whose government was rife with corruption. He faced several coup attempts himself, but survived them all.
The 68-year-old came to power in a rebellion in 1990 and was one of Africa's longest-serving leaders.
However, on April 20th, 2021, he was shot and wounded while visiting soldiers on the front lines in a firefight with the rebel group Front for Change and Concord in Chad. He died the following day.
The exact circumstances of his death remain unclear, and some observers question the military's narrative.
His death plunged the country into deeper unrest. As of writing, the country's constitution is suspended, its National Assembly dissolved, and Déby's patriotic salvation movement holds sway, with Déby's son, Mahamat, as interim president.
Chad's military dissolved the constitution and announced it would rule for 18 months after the death of its president. Rebels whom the military blames for killing President Déby are also reportedly seeking to overthrow the new transitional government.
Number 5. Jovenel Moïse. Political leaders can have dangerous enemies, sometimes with deep pockets. Haitian President Jovenel Moïse's years in office were tumultuous.
Political stability is the first public resource. In no country on earth is it possible to talk about development unless there is political stability, unless there is social peace.
But his years in office were challenging, and he faced allegations of money laundering and corruption.
He faced countrywide protests due to increasing fuel prices. According to the New York Times, before his death, he had been about to expose corruption among Haiti's politicians and business people. On July 7, 2021, a team of Colombian mercenaries shot and killed him in his home.
To be gunned down in the night at his private residence is a shock. Neighbors heard 2 hours of gunshots, they say. Police only secured the scene at dawn.
They had reportedly been told to retrieve Moïse's list of the country's corrupt elite. Moïse's wife Martine managed to escape with her life, despite suffering multiple gunshot wounds.
The question now is, how does Haiti cope with all this? Because already the Dominican Republic has reportedly closed the border between Haiti and the Dominican Republic over concerns of security.
Number 4. Shinzo Abe. The assassination of former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in the summer of 2022 shocked the world.
The assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe shocked not just Japan, but the world. Flags were ordered to half-staff here in the United States to honor that country's longest-serving prime minister.
Abe served as prime minister for 8 years, a record in Japan, from December 2012 to September of 2020. His tenure was controversial, with people divided over his conservative nationalist policies. On July 8, 2022, Abe was shot by former member of the Japanese Navy, Tetsuya Yamagami.
And that he planned the attack for about a year and reportedly had planned to use an explosive. But in order to target only Abe instead of a large group, he decided to use a gun instead.
Yamagami said he committed the assassination due to alleged ties between Abe and the Unification Church, a Christian sect based around the teachings of self-proclaimed Messiah Sun Myung Moon. Yamagami's mother had apparently been taken in by the movement, her donations leaving her bankrupt.
Where mourners are lining the streets outside of a temple for the funeral of the late former Japanese leader Shinzo Abe 4 days after he was brutally gunned down in broad daylight.
Number 3. Zoran Djindjic. Zoran Djindjic was only the prime minister of Serbia for 2 years before he was assassinated in March of 2003.
Serbs are commemorating the murder 10 years ago of the country's first democratically elected president, Zoran Djindjic, who was gunned down in sniper fire on the steps of government headquarters in Belgrade.
The president of the country's Democratic Party, he became prime minister in 2001 after the overthrow of Slobodan Milosevic. Djindjic had Milosevic and members of the Special Operations Unit, or JSO, who had been charged with war crimes during the Yugoslav wars, extradited to face justice in The Hague, Netherlands.
Djindjic's killing stunned Serbia. He had fronted a popular uprising that led to the ousting of President Slobodan Milosevic in 2000. It was under his leadership as Prime Minister that Milosevic was eventually extradited to the War Crimes Tribunal in The Hague.
He also took a hard line towards organized crime, making a lot of enemies in a short time. The JSO mutinied, and on March 12, 2003, a former JSO member fatally shot Djindjic as he was getting out of a vehicle.
Every March the 12th, supporters hold a walk for Zoran through the centre of the city, laying flowers at Government House and at his grave.
Number 2. Benazir Bhutto. Pakistani Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto made history in 1988 when she became the first woman to head a democratic government in a Muslim-majority country.
A controversial figure, loved by many, loathed by others for her outspoken views.
Her tenure was controversial due to her secular agenda and allegations of corruption. In 1990, President Ghulam Ishaq Khan dismissed her administration.
Bhutto was dismissed by the president, a rival politician, on grounds of corruption.
At home in Karachi, Benazir Bhutto meeting today with her close political advisors. 48 hours after she was dismissed from government, she's convinced it was the work of the army.
After losing the 1997 election, Bhutto went into exile. A decade later, in the lead-up to the 2008 elections, she survived a bombing that killed at least 180 people. 2 months later, however, at a political rally, another assassination attempt took her life, as well as 24 others. It's believed that al-Qaeda was behind both attacks.
The UN report says Bhutto's death could have been prevented if the government, under then-President Pervez Musharraf, took adequate measures to respond to the extraordinary and fresh and urgent security risks that they knew she faced.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Muammar Gaddafi. Muammar Gaddafi ruled as de facto leader of Libya for over 40 years, from 1969 to 2011.
At the height of power, Gaddafi called himself Africa's King of Kings. Ronald Reagan called him the mad dog of the Middle East. Ruthless with his own people, reviled here for ordering the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland.
His authoritarian leadership was controversial both at home and abroad. During the 2011 Arab Spring protests, the situation degenerated into civil war. After NATO intervened on the side of the rebels, Gaddafi was left on the run. He was eventually captured by a rebel militia.
They say they discovered him here just before 12 o'clock this afternoon. They pulled him out of the hole, and one fighter told me that Muammar Gaddafi said to him, "What did I do to you?"
There are different accounts of his death, with the National Transitional Council claiming he was caught in a crossfire. However, videos show him meeting a brutal end at the hands of the rebel militia on October 20th, 2011.
This is a Libya that for the first time in 42 years does not have to live in fear of Muammar Gaddafi. He is gone for good, and few, if any, are mourning his passing.
Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.